Welcome to the December, can you believe it, second version of the Coordination Circle of the Lifeboat Academy. And welcome one and all. And as is our custom, we usually start with a land acknowledgement. And is there anybody who would like to lead it today, or shall I? So I shall. This is my second land acknowledgement of the day, so I'm going to see if I can jazz it up a little bit. Although why bother when it works well the way it is? So we start by acknowledging the land in the tradition of indigenous cultures in North America, multiple cultures that have this this practice, this habit, this custom. And we do so as a reminder to ourselves that we are part of a larger system. And the land was here before we were. The land will continue to be here long after we are gone. And that doesn't just mean us as individuals, it means us as Homo sapiens. And a reminder that there's a much bigger story afoot. And we are embedded and a part of that story, but only a part of it. And so it is a reminder for us to inhabit the landscape properly, to be in good relations with all of our relations, to understand our interconnection, and to respond appropriately. So we start our meetings that way as a reminder that even though we've got things on the agenda, keep it in perspective. And for that wisdom, we express our gratitude to Indigenous cultures around the world who have maintained it throughout the many, many generations. And in recognizing that that gratitude, there is also an obligation to do what is necessary to be in right relations, to recognize the harms that have happened, and to do what we can to heal them wherever we can. And so with that, I acknowledge that I live on the territory that has been stewarded for time immemorial by the WSÁNEĆ and by their Coast Salish neighbors and relatives, and who are still here today, who are still my neighbors, who are still working to maintain and recover and heal the damage that has happened to their culture at the hands of colonists, and not even some of it intentional and a lot of it unintentional, but still harmful. And so as we move forward, we all can let this be an inspiration for us to stretch ourselves in the direction of being good neighbors, good relations, and good ancestors. And so with that, I invite you to take a moment just to ground yourself and get comfortable where you are. Remind yourself that you are a body in the world, and take a deep breath in. Feel the oxygen entering your system, the little excitement of fresh energy, and on the exhale, feel the relaxation as your body presses down into the seat that supports you and holds you. Think of your breath as just one example of the interconnection, the reciprocity, breathing in oxygen created by our green cousins, breathing out carbon dioxide that no longer serves us but serves them. And take a moment just in your mind's eye to locate yourself in the landscape. See yourself in the room where you are. See how that room is in the building. See how that building sits on the land. And just quickly call your attention to the north, reminding yourself of the landmarks and the relations in that direction. And to the east, in the direction of the rising sun. To the south, and all the landmarks in that way. And to the west, in the direction of the setting sun. And take one more breath in, drawing in from all the relations, seeing yourself in the center of your landscape. And as you exhale, just let go of anything that doesn't allow you to be present this afternoon, this evening. And when you're ready, join us back in the circle by opening your eyes. All right, time for a little check-in. And I'm gonna get a jump on things and do a check-in that is also a little bit of a North Star. And one of the things that we've been talking about is there are lots of ways of thinking about the lifeboat. The lifeboat is a fill in the blank. And so I thought as our check-in, we could just go around and say, what's one aspect of the lifeboat that is speaking to you this afternoon? So the lifeboat is like a blank. And also just to check in on how you're doing as well. And the circle, as I see it, is Ronnie, Roland, April, and me. So over to you, Ronnie. And of course, you always have the right to pass. Over to you, Ronnie.
Right now, I feel like the lifeboat offers being with reality and being sober. That's all yeah, in multiple ways, sober. Um, and I'm tired and I have a headache. So I'll see. I'm gonna try and stay through the whole meeting, but no promises. I'm gonna see how I do. And I don't know who I'm passing to. I'm sorry.
Roland.
Okay.
And you're muted, Roland.
I wasn't supposed to be because I clicked the button. The lifeboat is home. Over to April.
But how are you, Roland? The lifeboat is a potluck dinner. And I'm okay, but tired in a Monday kind of way. Over to Ben.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's some of that going around. I also am feeling today's just felt like a hard day, and nothing in particular happened that made it hard. It just felt like a hard day, feels like a hard day. And I think the lifeboat right now, what I long for the lifeboat to be is the pharmastery, that healing place, halfway house, half sacred site, and half practical keeps me fed. So I know that's three halves, but I'm non-linear, so there. Meh. And so I will call up our agenda. And that's not our agenda. So we have a lot of tasks that we talked about at our last meeting, and look at all the check marks. And I think even the only I know that there also are half check marks on some of the other things. So I think most of those things will be going over. I am happy to report that we have finished the pitch deck, and we recorded a draft of that, and we'll be sharing that soon. It's a very rough draft of going through it, but it's about 20 minutes, and generally feeling good about where that is out at. We'll be checking in on the cohort, and we'll be spending most of our time talking about the annual reports and collating. And And then I know that Ronnie's been doing a lot of work reaching out to the Interim Stewardship Council, and we've been getting some responses there. So on for the agenda tonight, we have going through the annual review process, specifically looking at how we collate the guild reports into a total. With a little time to update on the, actually, I'm going to put on cohort in there too. Update on reconnecting with the Stewardship Council and also on the 2025 cohort. See if that works. Yeah. And we have just kind of from the past, it's a kind of a placeholder. We don't need to talk about it tonight, but making a decision about whether or not the charrette is hybrid or Zoom in, preparation for moving forward on that. And then our standard item about picking a feature from the coordination circle or for the newsletter. So that's our agenda. And then we also have our kind of normal activities. I think a lot of these are going to, I'm proposing that we give them a miss because it kind of, in talking about the annual review process, we're going to be talking about most of these things anyhow. So with that, I just want to give everyone a chance to say whether or not this agenda works for you and if there's anything else that you'd like to add. So over to you, Ronnie. Is this okay, or is there anything to add?
Works for me. Over to Roland.
Awesome. April? Awesome. Okie dokie. So getting into the collating the reports, most of us have had a hand in most of the reports. And but I think probably it makes sense. I'm thinking out loud. I didn't prepare this ahead of time, but I'm thinking in terms of a process, it makes sense to do a light review on what are in the reports, going through each of them, and then talking through what does collating that look like, probably in a gathering considerations fashion. So that's what I'm proposing, and thumbs up if that works, and hand up if you have any additions or refinements. Cool. All righty. So let's just get into it. And heart work. So all of the reports should be more or less structured in the same way. And I can't remember whether we've already covered this, but I'm just gonna, we have the accomplishments, and for heart work, it's actually, I'm not going to cover the accomplishments tonight. I think I'm just going to go into lessons learned. We can all read what they are. And going through the lessons learned, we talked about reminders, sort of the process being something that pulls us back to doing things in a way that is helpful and works. And sometimes that requires a little discipline. So things like meeting notes, cleaning up the notes. We highlighted kind of in a future file, the badges and the task lists are also a good reminder. And part of the reminder being situational. So feeling into when does it feel like we need a reminder? And when does it look like somebody needs a reminder? We have some questions around how do we make sure we're supporting people and taking on responsibilities? How do we make sure they're clear, reasonable, people can follow through? And we also talked a little bit about seasonal thinking, which is more than just quarterly. So also there's a period to it, which is useful. So our coordination circle offers a, every 2-week period, and then the seasons offer a larger period, and then the annual review offers a larger period as well, but also thinking about the ebb and flow of the different seasons. And that ability to focus on the 20 that gets us 80.
Yeah.
And we looked at how our thinking has shifted. So we're getting more refined. I guess it's sort of getting comfortable with the fuzzy boundaries between things, getting clarity where there can be clarity, and also being able to know it's always a permeable boundary. We've been thinking, and this is going to come through all of the guilds, I think, what are the relationships between the guilds? So, what's the core of outreach? What's the core of heart work? What's the core of the curiosity guild or research guild? And some ideas for the next steps for heart work, thinking about how heart work supports other guilds, and getting some clarity around caretaker responsibilities, and also more deeper, increasing our understanding of the relationship between circle and sociocracy, which are not the same things, but are closely related. And we looked a little bit at how we were having our impact, and we also I think a lot of the impact was, let's start thinking more carefully about how we are having impact and how we can measure that. So just once around, I figure we'll go through each. I'll just go through each one, and then we can do a quick initial thoughts. We're not getting into the discussion, but just if there's any point that you want to bring out, something that's missing or something that's occurring to you, we'll just go through each of the guilds quickly, and then we'll have most of the conversation after the reviews. So with that in mind, over to you, Ronnie. Any additions, comments?
Just noticing some similar things that came up in the outreach reflections as well. I really liked the impact considerations and discussion. I think it's really easy to focus on what we're doing and not so much the outcome. But I think we do in principle talk a lot about impact. So the social impacts of, and I think, yeah, the social impacts on people out there, but also what are the impacts of us? I think that's really that sounds really useful. So yeah, over to Roland.
Well, I want to thank Ben for preparing this in this way. And yeah, go us is what I think. Over to April.
I really like this as well, but I'm always fascinated by impact, what it is, how do you measure it, who says, etc. I think thinking about impact and worrying about are we having impact is really a healthy thing to keep us on track, but also to keep us, if you want to term it this way, honest in taking a critical look at what we're doing, where do we think we are, who gave us those perceptions anyway, and how would I know what's going on? Over to Ben.
Yeah, and the honesty makes me think of humility as well. Kind of not believing your PR, and
Yeah.
trying to bring yourself back to ground. I agree. All right, moving on then to next is outreach, just because that's how it's coming up here. And so again, we've got a list of accomplishments really focused on a couple of those big projects. And then we looked at progress, and we went back to the driver statement, and we thought about allyship, and there's things happening that aren't necessarily registering in the driver statement. There's been a lot of progress in relationships and logistical stuff. A feeling like we're on track. Again, actually, this came up in heart work, but also in outreach. The guilds seem to be working. we're finding our feet that way, and it seems to be helping as a way of working. Connected Thought's really successful, stuff to build on. And yeah, and that again, feeling into that overlap between the guilds. Where's the handoff between the different guilds? So some of the lessons learned, consistency is really important. Yeah, we're learning how to work with the guilds, between the guilds, recognizing what kind of lives more in one, what lives in the other, and how to hand off between it. And also I think there was the idea that it wasn't just about who does the work, but kind of the lenses of the guilds, kind of being able to
Yeah.
think about things intentionally from a couple different perspectives, as a way of clarifying things. It's very useful to have a process. Frequent reminders comes up again. The aim, act, reflect, being able to iterate and to learn as we go, what works and what doesn't. Working relationally is really, I think there's universal agreement that working relationally just seems to be really fundamental, central to what we're doing. The memes, I think this goes to the consistency. Also, having the memes and they become our frequent reminders. So they aren't just for out there, they're also for in here. And again, the balance of that last one about the oral tradition and the notes, being able to, for things to morph, but for there also to be some consistency and some touch points to come back to. And how has the thinking shifted? Thinking a lot about the Venn diagram, about how the different guilds interact. We're all circle keepers, really kind of spreading the load and knowing that we all need to be kind of aware in the process. And we're growing slowly, but quality over quantity. And yeah, and working and that ability to bring new people on board. Keep on, in terms of next steps, keeping on. Allyship seems interesting. Finding ways to talk more about how our conversations, not just sharing what other people do. Idea about maybe t-shirts and bumper stickers. April, I'm sure you can get excited about that. And how do we craft the messages so people can get it, and which is, I think, going to be one of those ongoing refinements, always working towards figuring out how we do that. And thinking about pharmastery outreach. So outreach not just for the online events, but how do we start to bring more energy to the farm itself? So that's a quick overview on outreach. So over to you, Ronnie. Again, just a reactions round.
I have no reactions at this moment. Over to Roland.
It's been an awesome year. Over to April.
Yeah, this is very rich stuff, I think, and it's really feels to me like this is the emergent part of what we've been doing. The other notion that I have is that I would like to be part of designing the T-shirt that has the gauntlet and the person carrying the basset hound as they gauntlet staying with me. That's a meme in itself, but I was just quite taken by that. Over to Ben.
Yeah, agreed. All right, well, what do we got next on the hit parade? Next, finance and legal.
Mm.
So, in terms of accomplishments, we've got, I think, a solid agreement on how the structure. I think we're finally settled. I hope, please, we're finally settled on multi-stakeholder co-op as legal form, and we've got I feel really confident about the rules of association. They've been reviewed by lots of different people. Lawyers are currently looking at them. And we've done a lot of relationship building in that area as well. Different kind of relationship building, uh, and I think in that Venn diagram, there's a lot of different people. There are relationships that go along with each circle on the Venn diagram, and so we have to be building relationships in a lot of different directions, and those build in different ways. So lessons learned, that took longer than I thought it would. You know, definitely this is slow and steady work. And I think the other thing too is just recognizing, I think we're all coming to recognize the cultural inertia and how encoded that is, especially in legal and financial terms. And so what we're trying to do is really, sailing into the wind in terms of that kind of pushback. And I think the big shift that has happened this year, one is establishing or, really settling on the co-op as opposed to a B Corp. And the share structure, dividing the footprint share into a deed share and a care share, with different rights and responsibilities. I feel like I'm looking forward with some trepidation, but I'm looking forward to feedback on the pitch deck because I think that comes out well in the pitch deck that the stakeholders the stakeholders is a way of there was one of the comments on I think it was in the outreach about it's all made up, like the boundaries are all made up and the stakeholder groups are kind of all made up. They aren't clear, and this group distinct from this group, there's a lot of overlap. And I think that comes out with the shares because anyone can buy any shares and any combination of shares, and that really sort of determines your rights and responsibilities are just determined by the share structure, and your stakeholder group doesn't matter so much. So in terms of next steps, we got to finalize the bylaws. That's hopefully within spitting distance. And then it's about going out and finding subscribers and bringing Steph in as I think one of the key primary, most important stakeholders to get on board early, and then finding more partners. So that's that report. And again, round 4 reactions and responses. Ronnie, over to you.
When we first formed this iteration of the guilds, I called this the Devils in the Details Guild, and it really seems like that's what this is. So kudos to y'all for working all the details out, and yeah, I like the how all of this feels to me and how it sounds, and I'm excited to see how hopefully it will continue to manifest, and also really hoping that people will be able to see themselves
Yeah,
in this.
yeah.
And maybe people who 2 or 3 years ago didn't see themselves might start to be able to. And I think that's just part of the process too, and how this sort of very new, yet not new thing comes into being. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what happens without attachment to the outcome. Over to Roland.
I think one of the things that is maybe not as reflected here as in other guilds is the amount of internal and personal work that is also involved in facing and dealing with current structures and trying to imagine what comes next. There and it also because there are different people in the guild come from different perspectives and different angles, and And that's been very rich and challenging and important. So that I think that's also part of the whole, linking that with other parts of the project. Yeah. So over to April.
Well, I really liked what Ronnie said about hopefully people can see themselves reflected in the shares and in the structure, I guess. And with that comes a different kind of understanding. This emergent understanding is really exciting. I believe, and I believe it's something that there's been seeds of for maybe 5 years, but it's been planted in soil which has been shifting. And look at this. There's a blossom of some kind happening here, at the very least. This feels real. It also feels like it reflects the values that I think are at the core of this. So tremendous work around that, because that means that all of you doing this guild work have had to, as Roland said, reflect on your own personal inertia and our social learnings and personal learnings that need to shift a bit, gently but firmly. And that's kind of reflected here. So this is a tremendous piece, and it's well, it feels more robust to me than it ever has before. So something shifting in me too, I guess. Anyway, thank you for that finance and legal person who has been walking the furrows of this field for a very long time, up to your knees in the bog sometimes. Anyway, over to Ben.
Yeah, that what you're saying makes me think of Roland's grandfather and the 2 years of observing the field before doing anything, and then there's a long period of observation, and then there's also work that needs to be done that takes years. And preparing the soil, you don't just plant it and wonderful things come up. There's work that has to be done, and it takes the time it needs to take, and hopefully that'll come out. The quality of the thinking hopefully will hopefully we went slow to go fast. So yeah, onward and upward. And next up, Farm Guild. And
I just realized that I didn't schedule a meeting to talk through the stuff. So we could do that and then present next time, or we could just go through this dog's dinner of stuff.
I think we can go through the dog's dinner, and it's probably quite wonderful. So um thanks for taking the time to do all the work and clear up all this, like pull all this information. The guild that has been the least guild-like has been the farm, because we have been meeting, but it's different. So yeah, and so we've started, Roland's done a tremendous amount with the gardens this year. Um, and a lot of experimenting, a lot of different little experiments that are all yielding some good results. I think that one of the big things is that we've had 10 woofers and guests this year. Working with the woofers continues to be, I think, exercises in outreach. A lot of what we learn in terms of how we talk about things comes from the woofers. Also, and I think the other thing too, the the how do I want to say it, enthusiasm that the woofers have for what we are talking about, and for the pharmastery, for more than just the farm part of it, has been really rewarding. We've got our water system up and running. We have firewood for the winter. Paul is finally moved out and he's a lovely man, but oh my God, that I'm glad that's done. And the sea can is finally moved. And we took care of, we rented a dumpster and we got rid of a whole bunch of junk. Goats were rotating over the summer. They're now kind of free range because it's winter time and so much harder to move them in the winter. The farm kitchen is usable and being used. The library is now working, and we've been doing some interesting things with figuring out how to build pathways using the punky wood that's around. So lots of little experiments and lots of progress in ways that are actually visible, but on a 47-acre property, there's always more to be done than is done. But still there's been a lot of progress. Yeah, I think that's a good point. Even though we're in limbo, we're still working in ways on the land that are, and in a way it's been helpful because I think we've adopted a much healthier tempo for the work that we're doing, um, and learning to go with the ebbs and flows of when help is here and when it isn't. Um, and figuring out ways of setting up tracking systems, little here, little there, but getting better about tracking, and which is, again, it's also, as the other thing too that's different with the farm than with all the other guilds. The guilds mostly have a project, one or two things that they're responsible for, and the farm is everything else. So that also makes it a little bit more challenging. So yeah, learning that working with the tempo and the energy that's available. Um, Roland is doing some really amazing stuff around the seasonal, extending our season, and really looking at how we can have at least two, probably three seasons of growing in the year. We've been doing some ditching that's really exciting, and we need ducks, which is our constant. The number one nemesis right now are slugs, and have been for all summer. And we're getting propane tanks. That was the propane tank is also a lesson in trying to get ahead of the curve. There are, so many different things to be on top of. Oh, a lesson about electric fence. Deers don't know electric fencing. And so oftentimes the fences are not where we left them, and the goats are not the responsible parties. We've had really good work, good learning with the goats around clearing brambles, and especially when we can focus them, when we're rotating them. It's really good. So yeah, and figuring out how we can build on what we have been doing so that we're not reinventing the wheel. So yeah, a lot of things are, I would say some of them are just a keep on keeping on in terms of there are a lot of projects, getting the tractor fixed, making sure that we're measuring things, tracking things. We have a start of a plan to make the goat house movable that will help with rotations. Starting to move more into moving from clearing pathways to actually cutting the fallen trees. And we've had storms enough this year that we have more trees down. And then continuing work on, the garden, the fruit trees, cover crops, etc. And hopefully doing some work to increase our accommodations for next year. So we can have even more than 10 woofers next year. So yeah, I think that's a great work, Milan. That pulled a lot together. So reaction round, over to you, Ronnie.
I just keep thinking that if I were to teleport to the farm, it'd probably look, I would probably notice some drastic differences that y'all would not see in the same way because you've been doing it and living it day in and day out. So I'm like, I want to see
Yeah.
what it looks like, and especially with all the like Paul's stuff gone and anyway, I'm just really excited for everything that's happened, and um increasing the growing season sounds amazing, and I'm curious to learn more about that. So, yeah, this is awesome. Over to Roland.
So something that I didn't put in is that we repaired and moved the chicken house, and with the level ground of the property, it only takes one person to push the chicken house around. So that's a good learning. And I've been reading up on deer and movable electric fence, and one of the challenges with deer is that their the way that their body is made up makes them less sensitive to electric fences. Even the structure of their fur acts as insulation. So a trick is to put peanut butter on the electric fence so that they go for it, and then they learn to stay away from the electric fence.
Mm.
Anyway, so I'm just trying to see what can we do to prevent the deer from running into it and wrecking it and such. And it may be that we have to figure out how to read the land to know where there are deer paths to avoid the deer paths. It could be as simple as that. Yeah. So and I think one of the things that I was thinking of adding to for the next year is developing some more robust tracking systems, and maybe in conjunction with the Curiosity Guild over to April.
Well, I'm really delighted to get this report. There's just something about it that is inspirational and motivational as well. And I mean, not just the enumeration of what has happened, but the spirit in which it's done and the spirit in which the information comes to us is really important. And I've actually been taking screenshots of this so that I can look at it more closely and say, oh yeah, that's why this might feel and look this way. And I'm harking back to the last set of bullet points that involved the thermodynamic thinking about emotion and energy. And I think that's incredibly important about, the being patient and allowing for recovery time so that, stuff can surge up again. It's like a sine wave of some kind. We have some control over that, but not complete control. But being able to see that happening um, over time, being able to reflect that back is maybe quite a useful thing in terms of motivation and being kind to yourself um, for what's gone on. And it's a great lesson in resilience for everybody else, is it not? She says. Um, I do think seasonal and annual reports in themselves are something that adds oomph to our way forward. And in most organizations, annual reports uh, might be because you're trying to put only the best stuff forward, so nobody notices where all the flaws are, or whatever, or argues with you about stuff. But this is a different sense to it and a different experience than that. So there's something that's working really well here. And thank you, Ben. Oh, and deer fences, sometimes flagging the fences with long streamers um, keeps the deer out as much as the fence does. That is
Mm.
my experience on Tibet.
Mm. Cool. Well, and I think this is also, April, your comment about inspirational and motivational is also sometimes I think it feels like it's hard to explain why we have to have a physical farm when so much of what we do is online. But that's absolutely it. And the thermodynamics of the emotional and physical energy is something that you only understand, or it is so much more direct when you are interacting with the land to produce food, you know, which is also different than interacting with the land as a park, you know. It's lovely to, do forest bathing and stuff like that, but actually having a productive farm
Yeah.
is it goes back to that honesty thing, right? It keeps us honest, and I think it keeps us humble. And it's why, for me, it's the centrality of it being place-based. Even if we all aren't on the same place, there's still something really, I'm going to say spiritual about it being tied to a physical place that we can share that experience. And it is also, I think, when the woofers come, they are making that connection
Yeah.
on their own. They are all making that connection without being prompted. And yeah, so I think it's really important. Awesome. So we've got one report left, and that's going to be a relatively quick one, which is the Research and Learning Guild, aka Curiosity Guild. There aren't a lot of accomplishments here because it's basically been I'm not going to say it's been a one-person guild. So I think the guild has done work, but it's basically been me. And that includes a proposal for reinvigorating it, the Curiosity Guild proposal and the research project idea. And also early in the year, I think I'm claiming credit for the onboarding. I'm claiming credit on behalf of the Research and Learning Guild for the onboarding that we did early on in the spring. The way in which our ideas have shifted is definitely that there didn't seem to be a lot of uptake around governance. And I think that's a really, and we've heard it in some of the other reports, there are a couple ways in which the other guilds can be assisted by the research guild. And I think it's almost thinking about that as like in sociocracy, there's a helping circle idea. So there are sort of like central functions, outwardly facing functions, and then there are these kind of internal helping functions. And I think that's really a better place to position the research and learning part. So it's really about onboarding and assisting the other guilds to be able to, how do you track impact? How do you take a vague idea and shape it into an experiment that you can actually run? So I think that's really the big thing here. I guess the other thing too that came to me, I think it's in one of the other reports, but it's sort of the research and learning is kind of a transition guild between outreach and heart work. And there's direct connections between outreach and heart work, but there's also a way in which the learning part, I think, of research and learning is about when those people that when outreach has piqued people's curiosity, then it's kind of onboarding, it's the learning part to onboard people and bring them up to speed, and then heart work to, carry them through and to, go deeper. So anyhow, that's the research and learning report. So again, reactions, responses, over to you, Ronnie.
I really like the shift from governance to sort of how does the experiment work. And I think in part because I'm thinking about other people and governance. When you talk, I've been in multiple groups where you talk about governance and people get tense. And it's like, well, what's the best structure? What's the best way to govern ourselves? But what we're actually talking about is how do we organize around this project? How do we organize things so that we work together well and we meet our goals and we carry out the functions of each guild. And so this is centering the land, it's centering the project instead of ourselves. And I think that just, it feels refreshing to me, and it feels a lot more sort of like curious and open and aligned. Um, and it's kind of like what we say about sociocracy, like we are talking about governance, but we're not talking about governance. So it's kind of
Mhm.
the trickster thing. Um, yeah, I like it. Over to Roland.
I'm quite pleased that the research project has a home guild, and that that whole aspect of the project um, uh, now has a space in which to develop. Because I think I've always thought that it was a really important element, and one that's also really easily lost. So yay. And I was really curious, given that we've reestablished this guild and renamed it just what 2 months ago. I was curious to see what there would be, but what I find interesting is that we've already been talking about it as in other guilds as something really
Mm.
useful and needed. Oh yeah, now we have a guild that dot dot dot. So yeah, I'm excited about where it's gonna go and what it's gonna do. And I'm wondering, I guess it would be after the charrette that we would have the first guild meeting, because I could also see a whole wackadoo of people being interested in it. So over to April.
This whole thing that's going on that makes up all these reports is actually a learning generator. And I think the Research and Curiosity Guild is sort of uh, it's related to that really deeply. And it makes sure that learning won't get lost. And that if we're not sure about something, we have an experimental way of trying to figure out a little bit more certainty about it. And it also allows the aspects of sociocracy that actually are governance to show up and to be illuminated in that way. Because if you're talking collective decision making, then you're talking governance. And this makes it much more, what would you say, holistic and much more embedded in almost everything rather than being a separate little piece that floats off there and is seen to be of some higher order. This flattens hierarchical thought, I think, which I believe is something that something that I struggle with and something that I think we are trying to deal with in everything that we're doing here. Over to Ben.
Yeah, and it made me, I was, I actually clicked into, like, part of Heartwork's annual report was how does Heartwork share what is important in Heartwork to the other guilds? And so in some ways we're all helper guilds to other, like, outreach is helping the other guilds, advertise and bring people into the things they're doing. And Heartwork is the vibes watcher to make sure that we're living to our values, in each of the guilds. And then research is how do we, clarify what we're doing. So there's something really, like, lovely and uh uh, integrated, holistic, where it's like we only have helper guilds, like every guild is a helper guild. Um, Anyhow, that's just a thought that came up as I was sort of thinking about, the interdependencies, um, which feels so much more healthy. Like, I think that you know, how many organizations instantly develop silo problems? You know, hierarchy and silos are the, you know, the two probably biggest complaints. And this is by having boundaries that are permeable, and by having this orientation, like we centering the land, centering the project, means that everyone is in service to everyone else. Yeah, that just feels very poetic to me. Lovely. Okay, so we've already had some really good conversation, and I do have some notes that I hand wrote because I just wanted to keep the screen a bit clear. But now let's do and these are just notes from the annual planning process document put into what we're supposed to be gathering here. So let's start gathering considerations. So we're gathering considerations around what's the best way of collating these reports, with the idea of being able to present something to the Stewardship Council. So gathering consideration rules apply. There's no bad ideas. It can be ideas, it can be concerns, it can be possibilities, and try to keep it to one per round, and we'll do multiple rounds and build up that way. So over to you, Lonnie.
Well, what popped up into my head was just a document that has 1 page per guild with a notes version. I mean, it's already fairly abbreviated what we came up with for each guild, but just a succinct version of their answers to each of the sections. And of course, the sections for each guild will be the same, right? But yeah, so a 5 page document with notes that's easy to read is my idea. Over to Roland.
Well, and it may be the way my brain works. And it could be an also and, where there's an element where it is telling a story, so that it's a bit juicy, you know, and a way of integrating the information as a whole, as opposed to parts. So over to April.
Well, I'm thinking that there are some cross-cutting parts here that we have found to either occur in all the reports, or it's kind of like a meta thing of some kind that we agree on. So I think that needs to be maybe in the first section of the report. Then each guild has particular learnings that we need probably to cite and to keep somewhere in our heads and our actions. So I would want to see both those things included in the report. I really like the idea of 1 page per guild, because that's quick summary, easy to read, and if we have the same sections in all of them, then it's pretty obvious pretty quickly what we're talking about. And then I think people can absorb it. It would be really interesting to get feedback from people once we do this report as to whether this was a good way to do it, whether they found it a quick way to stuff stuff into their overstuffed heads, and if it felt like enough, that it was enough to really show the impact, I guess. Over to Ben.
I love that idea of like how do we just cram a little more stuffing in there. I think man, I love the circle, because I think this is really yeah, this all makes sense. So, you know, starting with the summary, what pulling out the either things that we've discovered across, especially the learnings across the guilds, or the shifting thinking across the guilds, I think would be, you know, that story of, you know, kind of what's the sizzle, what's the thing that unifies them. I'm also was noticing some of the guild reports have a really nice, like a bold, sort of a statement with a phrase bolded and some subpoints, so I think thinking visually about how to present the information too. But in that spirit of like, quick and easy to read. So I'm gonna actually add I'm gonna add mine under that of
Yeah.
so yeah, back over to you, Ronnie.
I'm wondering if we already have a graphic that shows the different guilds, just their
Um,
names. I think it'd be cool to have a graphic with maybe it's a Venn diagram or something else that just color coded each guild and a description of what it does. Because some people are gonna be like,
Yeah.
what the heck's going on? Just to show before the reports. And then it could all be kind of a nice polished sort of set of pages. Over to Roland.
This sounds good. I don't have anything to add at this point. Over to April.
I love the first page that's possibly going to be a Venn diagram because on account of I'm in love with Venn diagrams and always have been. And that's both illuminative but also constraining. But having some sort of, I guess, integrative kind of diagram is, I believe, a good idea. Over to Ben.
Yeah, and again, I've got a sub point on that because I was just thinking, well, it takes us back to the charrette and it leads into the charrette, right? So we have the farm as organism, or the Lifeboat Academy as organism with functions. And we also have a couple responsibilities or goals for them. So that sort of sets the context. So yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, over to you, Ronnie.
Sounds good to me. Over to Roland.
Still like it. Over to April.
Same, me too. Over to Ben.
Yeah, I'm good. Wow. Um, so I guess the question now, the big question is, how does this happen? Who does what? Um, so uh, does anyone, I'm going to do the circle again and in volunteer, basically, are there any parts that anyone wants to take on? So over to you, Ronnie. Are there any parts that you would like to take on?
I can do the first draft of the 1 page per guild. So I'll just take all the notes from the reports, put them in a document, and highlight main points if they're not already highlighted, and then pass it on to everybody else to do any formatting or fine tuning, if that sounds good. Over to Roland.
I can look for the graphics for the guilds, and if need be, whip some up. Over to April.
I'd really like to work on the graphic too, given my vast need to interact with Venn diagrams. Over to Ben.
Well then I guess I can take on trying to pull out the meta themes.
Great.
Cool. Is there anything left to do? Back once more, Ronnie, over to you.
Um, I'm fine with being responsible for kind of assembling all of it. So I'll do the document with the reports in it, and then I'll just keep adding to that. And then that will become the Lifeboat Academy 2024 annual report. Ta-da! Yeah. over to Roland.
I guess I can, if anyone's looking for anything and not finding it, I can assist and try to help with that. I think that's all I can really do. In addition to that stuff. Over to April.
I'm not sure what else I could do, but maybe if there's stuff that other people need a hand with, give me a shout. And I have to go in 10 minutes. Over to Ben.
The other thing, April, you might do, I'm thinking, because if we're all writing parts, you're editing somebody, it would be nice to have an editor, like somebody who's not doing the writing. Actually, Roland, this could also be something that you do. You've got a really great eye for the proofreading and stuff. So anyhow, that's we can talk about that. It's not going to happen this week. So I am super impressed with our ability to pull this off really quickly. This just feels so slick. So coming back to our agenda then, we've got just a few minutes until we all need to be going. So we've taken care of the main chunk of work. Ronnie, do you want to give an update on the checking in with the Stewardship Council?
Yeah, so I finished sending out those emails today. I've just been like sending them out in little batches when I have the time. Um, we've heard back positively from Bernie. He's excited to continue being an ally to us, and yeah, so that's cool.
And
Um,
Lisa,
Lisa,
yeah.
yeah, we heard back from Lisa. Um, I know that she was a bit confused about what the Stewardship Council is doing, and isn't sure if it's useful for her. Um, but yeah, I haven't written back because I'm not sure what to say. So if anybody wants to help me out with that, or
Mhm.
talk about it, that would be cool. Um, and I don't think we've heard from anybody else yet. Although, like I said, I just finished sending the emails out today. Um, and yeah, that's all I have on that.
Cool. Any thoughts, questions from anybody? I read Lisa's response as more than willing to help. Like basically
Okay.
a little bit confused about what you're doing, and let me know if I can help. And
Okay.
so, but I'm more than happy to help with that response. Um,
Oh, and about Lisa, I read it as well. I got the same impression. And I think anyway, there seems to be she seems to be willing to do more than just be on the Stewardship Council. So, is there a way of sort of probing, do you want to join a guild? Do you want to,
Mm.
what do you want to do? What do you want to do? So that
yeah.
was my impression.
Cool, cool, cool. And I think we also, I'm assuming Becca is also in,
Oh,
and
yeah. Yeah.
and Heather
Sure.
too.
Okay.
And I think I'm on that as well, aren't I?
Yeah.
All four of us are.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we
That means
are,
we at least have 7 to 8 already there.
yeah.
So cool.
Cool. And outreach. So I sent out the email. I've been working on the CRM on cleaning that up. And actually I want to share just because I can if I have it up here. So it was kind of funny, like we have that written down somewhere. Um, we have that written down somewhere, so we were thinking about what we need to do. We actually have the number that the CRM gives people is basically tracking the number of interactions and emails they open and things like that. And so there's a number of people on here that are kind of fading. They expressed interest, but I think there's no reason why we shouldn't reach out to them. And when I looked at the people that I kind of thought were likely candidates, we have about a dozen people right now who I think have expressed interest and have shown up. And that feels really good to me. And my question is, how can we share the load in sort of reaching out and doing the relationship building to move them to the next level? And I'm not sure where or how we have that conversation. I guess and I am putting on my sociocracy hat, and I'm saying this is the coordination circle. So really the question for us is not to get into it, but where should we get into that, or how do we want to sort of divide that up? And actually the other thing too is so there's 35 lifeboat builders here. And then I realized after I got this done, there were another 5 or 10 people that aren't on this list that are people that are on my list of, sort of it just, not like my people necessarily, but just people that we've interacted with that I thought, oh, they might be a good candidate. So we have a pretty good pool to, and again, my goal is if we can get 20-25 folks who are signing up, then I think we'll have the critical mass we need for, for all of, to not worry about are people going to show up at the events kind of thing. So no, that's my update on that. So thoughts, comments, reactions. Yeah, I guess just at popcorn style, does anyone have anything they want to add to that? Oh, actually, no, I take it back, because there's a question, how should we move this forward? So a quick round, any thoughts on the best way of moving it forward? Over to you, Ronnie.
This seems like an outreach discussion to me.
Yeah.
And our meeting is next Tuesday. So it's not super soon, but it's not super far away either. So that's my proposal in this moment. Yeah, over to Roland.
Same saying, over to April.
Same. Over to Ben.
Cool. By the way, we also have a time scheduled with Nadia Lambs?
Lobs.
Lobs, Nadia
Yeah.
Lobs, for Thursday. So that's cool. So I guess actually the thing here, and do I have permission to make outreach before then? I just
Oh,
I think it's good the meeting is ending, because I think my brain just clicked off. All of a sudden, the word thing sound make. Yeah, so I am totally good on next Tuesday outreach, working this forward, but also if does anyone have any problems if I try to move some things forward between now and then?
sounds good.
My only consideration is there's a couple people on that list that I'm connected to that I haven't heard from in a year, who I wouldn't say are necessarily people I would reach out to just because of reasons. So,
So, and actually, that was actually one of the things for the people, if I know who somebody's associated with, there's some names on there that I don't know who they're associated with, and there's some that I do. what I'd like to do is contact, if I think they are a contact of yours, can I send you like an email and say, here are, I think these are the people on the list that are associated with you. Let me know, are they, and if we just remove them from the list, I'm fine removing anybody from the list. I do think we should opt towards, you never know. So
Yeah.
there's some people who expressed interest and we maybe didn't follow up the way we should have. If there's, people that we know, like something just went sour and, they're not on the list, fine. Um, but, if we're unsure, I think keep them on the list and, how hard is it to send an email?
Yeah.
So, all right, so then, cool. That's great, because then what I can do is I'll just have a customized email to each of you. I think these are your folks. Are any of these no-goes? Is there anybody else you want to add? And then
Yeah.
that'll work really well. Cool. Any other last thoughts on this topic?
Is there
Um,
anyone, if there's anyone that any of us want to add to the list
yeah,
that aren't there yet?
yes. All right, cool. I think that brings us to the end of our programming. So a quick checkout. Yeah. Any last thoughts for the good of the cause? Blink, blink.
Um, I'm feeling a little urgency to choose a date for the charrette just because I'm trying to set dates for other commitments that I have in January and February. So that would be cool.
Okay.
That's all. And thank you all. Over to Roland.
Bon appétit. Over to April.
Thank you. Yeah, dates would be good. Good appetite would be good. And thank you for, well, for the collective thinking that's going on. Over to Ben.
Awesome. Once again, I am consistently impressed with how well sociocracy works at getting through a whole bunch of stuff in a relatively painless way. So thank you all, and we'll see you around. Enjoy your evenings.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.